Hi, friends. Welcome to your Daily Detroit. It's Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. I am Jer Stays, sharing what to know and where to go around Metro Detroit. Joining me on the line, Fletcher Sharpe. How are you?
It's really warm to start, given the fact that it was like highs of 26, and now yesterday the low was 37 or 35. I will take it. Seeing those big puddles of water where ice used to be was a little concerning, just because I don't like stepping in water, but I'll happily take stepping in water over stepping in that and potentially needing to go to the hospital.
You know, I walked around the studio when it was like 50 degrees, and I saw there was actually a couple of floors of progress. Michigan State University is building a research center over there in the new center area just south of the Fisher Building. It is coming along really fast. I was wondering where that sound was with like pile driving. It's like that steel is going in. They are rocking and rolling on that thing.
So this is the right time if you're going to try to resume building stuff. You might want to get into it real quick before it gets a little bit colder.
Yeah, I do know that this is fake spring, though. I understand over on our member-only Discord, you can join us, patreon.com/dailydetroit. Get on our member-only Discord. They were talking about the Tigers, and it's too early to talk about the team itself, but the anticipation of 6 weeks until opening day is palpable for baseball fans. I just wanted to call it out that it's coming. It's not that far away.
Yeah, this is one of those weird times where the Lions did well this last season. The Pistons are currently doing well. The Red Wings are doing all right enough for fans to not complain entirely. So yeah, people are very excited for the Tigers, especially given where they ended the season. And they look like they're trying, at least. So that's really what a lot of sports fans want. They want victories, but like if the team looks like they're going to give some effort, like people get excited for it. And having a number one ace doesn't really hurt either.
I saw you give some effort on Detroit Public Television, on One Detroit, a segment. You were like featured in it, man. You look good.
I don't handle television well. So when I got the invitation to even approach the subject, I was like, this is amazing. They're like, it's going to be on TV. And I was like, oh, man. But shouts out to Bill. He made it very easy to just sit there and relax. And I was able to talk about Steve Gromick, a native of Hamtramck, and Larry Doby, Baseball Hall of Famer, and the hug between them that I won't say shattered the race barrier, but definitely shined some light to some of the unfortunate underbelly of what happens when a black man and a white man hug, especially back then.
Those small actions, I mean, it seems minor in these modern times. Well, not as much minor anymore, but it seems minor, but it really was a huge deal. And it's still within so many people's lifetimes that this happened. I know we want to put a lot of this stuff in the rear mirror that, it's a long past or racism or dealing with these kinds of issues, but that's just not. It really wasn't that far ago, was it?
It was 1948. Like, there are people still alive from 1948. You might want to think about, well, that was a long time ago. Not really, man. It wasn't that long ago. But yeah, shout out to Steve Gromick, who is what an ally looks like. And if you're ever wondering what I'm talking about, you can go to One Detroit's YouTube page and find the video and take a listen. I not even just for my own self-promotion, but I do think it's a story that a lot of people, especially people who are into baseball in Michigan, but just native Michiganders entirely, should definitely know about.
Yeah, and I also popped it up on the homepage on dailydetroit.com, so it's nice and easy to find, because I'm really proud of you, man.
I mean, yeah, I'm proud of me, too. I mentioned it to my father, and he was like, you sounded very articulate, but you also could use a razor, so you can't really win for losing with him.
Well, if you listen to our members-only conversation, Off the Record, Off the Rails, you will understand even more of that story, so I encourage you to do that. That would be on our Patreon. All right, let's get into a little news. Seva. It was more than a decade in Midtown Detroit. They're closing at the end of the month. I'm paraphrasing here, but they basically couldn't make the math work. Business has been down since the pandemic. I'm sure we could look at a number of different causes. Some may be specific to the place, some may be overall. But this is also on the heels of the pausing of Duped Donuts, a project out of Elephant & Co. They're talking about maybe they'll come back at the Ferndale Project location, but those were vegan donuts. I know we're going to talk about a few vegan places that we know of to point people to into the future, but it feels, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels, Fletcher, like there have been like a few hits in the vegetarian and like vegan food community as far as going out.
Yeah, it really stinks, actually, because Seva has been around for a while. I remember when they opened, and it was right around the time that I had just stopped being vegan, so I was like, no, thank you. But they have some really great food. Like, you've seen other places come, chili mustard onions, similar places come and go.
R.I.P. Like, that place. That place was actually good.
Shouts out to Pete. He ran a really well organization, but just the demand wasn't there, and when it was there, people were sketchy inside, and unfortunately, he sought it as a way to just sell digitally as opposed to have a brick and mortar store. But throughout all of that, Seva was still there. And like, if you are on the social justice-y type tips, Seva was someone who also had strong opinions about that, and they were not ashamed to share it. So it's a shame from the food standpoint and also for the altruistic side to see them not be able to stay open.
Posted about it on social media. More than a couple people chimed in and got some notes as well when we posted it on Instagram. Some thought that maybe the quality had dropped off a little. I can't speak to it. I didn't notice that, but I will totally take someone else's opinions on that. But I will say that a lot of people were talking about parking issues, and it kind of is crazy. Someone actually shared, I'm going to leave it nameless, but shared that they went to the Ann Arbor location instead because they found it difficult to park in Midtown. And I'm just like,
it's really far away to drive.
So I've been in situations with people where they're like, we're going to go to this other place farther away, because there's just something about like going to Detroit that like gets some people really worked up around parking.
For their sake, I hope they were coming from like between. If they were like coming from 3rd Street, like, nah, I'm going to go to Ann Arbor instead. Like, that's crazy. Can you imagine just leaving the city to go 40 minutes away to then come back?
I've seen it.
I get it. Other people going to other places will park around there and such. And like you said, people kind of expect parking to be everywhere downtown and even in Midtown. And it's kind of wacky. I've had my own parking situations in Midtown that I can definitely talk about off the record one day. But I understand parking being an issue, but nonetheless, it's sad to see an institution like this unable to stay. And while they are still open for the little bit of time they are, you should definitely go in there and get your favorite meal and maybe let the owners know how much the place had an effect on you.
I've heard this across the board, not just with like vegetarian, vegan places, but traffic does seem to be down for folks since the pandemic. When it comes to these restaurants, though, Fletcher, I want to have a bit of positivity here and highlight some things that are open. I have not been, but a number of people I know really like Trap Vegan. They're up, I want to say, over on Livernois, but apparently they've also done an express spot on 3rd Street that I have not been to yet. Have you been?
I have not, but I have been to Street Beat at the back of 3rd Street.
Developer Adam really likes that place.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I've been, but when I was there, they had some pretty good food. I always recommend there.
So that's good to hear. I want to hear from you all around your favorite spots. dailydetroit@gmail.com. I'm admittedly no vegetarian or vegan expert, although I do enjoy something tasty.
Come on, man. Light the match to match the vibe. SRO's at 85. Like I'm on the getaway. Cause I gotta get away.
We just reported today on dailydetroit.com that Free People is in fact coming to downtown Detroit. And that was something that listeners actually asked about, if there should be Free People opening on the heels of the Apple Store. Well, those listeners, you can be happy. You're getting one. It's a definitely different vibe. And as somebody who remembers places like Flaming Embers when I was a kid and more people living around, it's a wild change, not just transplants, but really catering to the wider region, which is fine. I feel like there's some blame that gets put on transplants when there really haven't been that many new people added. I feel like a lot of it is people coming down, spending money.
Yeah, I'm not going to necessarily blame the transplants, although they kind of are in the firing line for me a little bit. It's more so people catering to them. It's not the transplant's fault. It's more so people saying, I'm going to build this place as if I'm going to have 50 people living here. Instead of 50, it's more like 20. But meanwhile, you're pushing out like 30, 40 people. And they continually doing that over and over and over. And then those people maybe might go out, but also might maybe go further than downtown. As a result, when they had the draft, it felt like a little micro city, just all the time, noise, noise, noise. And I'm sure when the Lions were doing crazy stuff, noise, noise, noise. But like, we used to live downtown above Intermezzo, right across from that hotel is now, right next to Harmony Park. Like, you would always hear like, not necessarily loud noise, but like you said, kind of like a hum, like a buzz of like, there's something happening. And when something big was happening, you would know. And when something was just, you know, oh, there's a musician somewhere. Sure. Okay. But like now there are parts where it's like legit just quiet. I know for the residents, people like just not having any noise, but I think for a downtown area, you're not supposed to just have dead quiet on like a Wednesday evening, Wednesday night. Like, you're supposed to have like some sort of buzz for something happening. And I think the movement of making it more inhabitable, which is good. It's great because you want people to live downtown because you need people to live everywhere, but especially downtown. But to make it more friendly for people inside the home instead of, you know, people walking around and doing stuff, I think it has drawbacks. And one of them is places feeling a bit more empty.
I wasn't going to go here, but I got thoughts because I'm looking for apartments. And if anyone's got suggestions, I'll hear you. But I now get all the Instagram ads for so many places that I was not getting before. And there are places, and since I've been following this a while, I know the places that are just full rehabs. It's not that they necessarily kick people out, but they had been sitting empty. And it is wild to me to see prices that are north of $3,000 to $5,000 a month. There's a spot near the Spirit of Detroit, $5,000 a month. And I'm not talking like you get a whole floor or something. Like, this is wild. And so I found a comparative in like downtown Brooklyn and New York. Like, there are people trying to get like New York prices for these things. And I'll click through the website and there's still a lot of availability. And it's like, I don't know who was thinking. I wanted to see these buildings get rehab. Don't get me wrong. But like, it is such a tiny group of people that can afford $3,000 to $5,000 a month rent.
I mean, that's the point I was getting to, where like they are rehabbing the places for new people to come in, but they're putting them at prices that, like, unless you work for a specific company and you're coming here not as like your first job, but like,
or you're here for a year.
Yeah, it's like an upgrade from wherever you've been. Then for sure you'll be able to afford that. But also you'll be living in a building that's supposed to have 50 people, and instead you probably got like 23.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. I get it.
Like you're having this apartment that has like 30 apartments, but it's like $5,000 per month for each apartment. So instead of you thinking I'm going to fill up all 30, you're going to fill up like 12. And it's because those 12 can afford to pay, but everyone who was there before couldn't. Perfect example that I don't want to get super personal, but my cousin used to live in the Stuberstone lofts above the Planned Parenthood in Midtown, above Curl Up and Die, RIP, and across from Sai Tai.
So like Cass and like Canfield-ish.
Right next to the frat house. Yep. So when we used to live there, it was cool. And then all of a sudden the landlord was running into some financial issues. And without really notifying anybody, he's like, hey, so I might be selling these lofts. And everyone's like, okay, well, we just paid for rent. So no. And he was like, well, you got $1 million. And everyone was like, huh? And he's like, that's how much I'm selling these for. And he sold 6 real quick. Unfortunately, ours was one of them, but real quick. And then like, I knew that he had a hard time selling the rest of them. And I was like, that's wild. How is that going to work? And my cousin's like, well, if he gets some money now, then it doesn't really matter if the rest kind of just stay there for now. But yeah, we moved out and that was it. Just taking that experience and moving it towards more of downtown and midtown, I'm like, that seems right. People want to charge these higher prices from other places because quote unquote Detroit is back. They play numbers games where it's like, if I charge more and less people say okay, as long as I hit a certain number, I'm okay with it. As opposed to I want to fill it up. And if it means I'm going to charge a bit less to fill it up, then fine. They want to hit the number for money. And I know that's partially just real estate, but it doesn't really feel very smart to me, especially if something were to burst and people decided to leave. It kind of feels like the prequel to like another white flight, and I very much hope that's not the case. But it's a little scary when the city that once had about 1.3 million is still under 850,000, and its busiest area, feels quiet on a Thursday night that has no sports.
Yeah, it's that number of residents. There was a panel with the Downtown Detroit Partnership where Downtown Detroit, now this was speaking specifically to the square mile or so, that's like the river, the lodge, Street 75 and 75. It is the smallest downtown of like cities in the Midwest. And it's not only the smallest by raw numbers, it's the smallest by percent of the region's population. And there's just not enough spots, and the spots that are there are expensive. I also mentioned this. Something crazy I'm seeing in this apartment search, and I know it's not legal, is people wanting crazy high security deposits. And that's a red flag right away. And you can go look online. I'm not a lawyer, but you can look online and look it up. If someone's asking for more than 1.5 security deposit, 1.5x, that's not the rule. So keep an eye out for that. I've ran into a number of listings like that, and I'm going to talk about it more. But these are some things I'm noticing now that I'm starting to poke around myself and like, okay, what are the things that need to be? It's kind of wild. And there's so much potential here. It's just, how can we meet the price to what people actually want to pay is hard. And I keep hearing that it's hard for the math or whatever, but there's got to be a way, man.
This is not Detroit, but I had a similar issue when we were looking to buy an apartment on Grosse Pointe, and we went for a deposit, and a very well-known realtor, it's like, oh, we have a deposit of this, and we were going to pay it. And I asked my father about it, and he's like, they definitely can't do that. And we went back with it, and he's like, oh, what about this instead? So like most of them know they can't. It's just, I was lucky that I have, my father is also my attorney. Lucky most times, unlucky like occasionally. But most people don't have the resource to just ask. If you ask an attorney a question, typically they will charge you for it. So they know that it's not necessarily legal, and they're like, well, they won't see it. And then, if you see it, okay, I guess I'll back off. My bad. And there's someone who will pay it because they found somewhere that they think is a good fit for them. So yeah, for sure, if you see more things like that, and making sure people know that they have moves as well to counter what some of these landlords are doing is very key.
You got an attitude, but that's your style. Maybe if I could get up in your latitude somehow, then we could put the past back where it belongs for now. Saturday special.
I want to mention that the week started with Apple saying that they are going to open a manufacturing supplier academy in Detroit to, quote, train the next generation of U.S. manufacturers. This is part of a bigger thing where the company's looking to spend $500 billion over the U.S. over the next 4 years to do things. Now, there was, or still is, a developer academy. We had a representative from Apple on this show when that came out in 2021. You can go back in the archive and see that. It's cool to see Apple do these things. It's also cool to see Apple invest in that manufacturing supplier part, because we're going to need our suppliers and companies to supply more than automobiles. And if Detroit can be a part of that, that would be a very cool thing. I don't have details specifically on the Detroit part of the investment, but, working with Michigan State, looking at implementing, smart manufacturing, I think those are all really good things and a good little step forward for the city.
Yeah, for sure. Anything that is moving positive, whether it's Apple coming here, whether it's any other place choosing to want to build here. I know some people don't necessarily like where it's like, well, the city feels like it's back when such and such. Yeah, I know. But when 7-Eleven moved downtown, people were like, oh, downtown's a good place to go. So if they can continue to just accumulate businesses, I hate to pull up a Marvel metaphor, but like how Thanos had all of his stones in his gauntlet, if they can just keep assembling their own Infinity Gauntlet of places people want to go downtown, I think they're moving in the right direction.
I'm going to end the show with a reminder about trivia with Mickey Lyons. We'll be doing a live show there as well. That's going to be on March 13th, Tokororo. Go to Eventbrite. Tickets are moving fast, although they are free. We would love to get your RSVP to make sure there's a spot, because space is limited. And that is something I can honestly say now that 2/3 of the tickets are gone. So you need to act. 313 day, 5 p.m. doors, 6 p.m. a little afterward trivia. eventbrite.com, 313-day trivia. Fletcher Sharpe, so good to talk to you, man.
Of course, thanks for having me. And what I will say about trivia is I'm going to beg Mickey, if you can go, there might be the best boy ever by the name of Mac, Mackenzie, her dog. If Mac can go, you should be at trivia. If not for trivia, but to meet the best boy in the world.
All right, well, with that, I'm J.R. Stays.
And I'm Fletcher Sharpe.
Thank you so much for listening. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.